Good morning, Dan. How are you?
I am good, Dan. How are you?
I'm spectacular, but I do have questions about the O.J. Simpson parole hearing yesterday. Well, let me ask you, what came to mind? What's the one question that is still left unanswered for you with what happened yesterday?
Well, there was a parole board member who decided on the day of the parole board O.J. meeting to wear a Kansas City Chiefs tie.
I know.
To the parole board. I'm baffled. Now, did he just think it was a football-themed parole board? Like, what if he had worn someone who was a rival of the Bills? Like, imagine if you're going for parole and you're a Buffalo Bill and he shows up with a Patriots or a Jets tie. I mean, you're like, wait, this is outrageous.
Did you get the feeling that O.J. still thinks he can talk himself out of any situation? Because I'm watching yesterday, and it just felt like the longer he talked, the deeper he got in, but he thought he could charm you. And I don't know if it worked yesterday, but he did that yesterday.
Well, to a more serious point of what I was getting at is I think this thing was fait accompli. The parole board did not like all the attention. They just wanted O.J. out. And they didn't want to have to do this again in another year or whenever he's up again for parole. So he was going to get out. But look, I did a story early in the week talking to O.J.'s former lawyers, other lawyers. Everyone says the same thing. There is one golden rule, a one-word golden rule when it comes to a parole board hearing, and that is remorse. Go in, say, I did it. I'm sorry. I'll never do it again. I've learned from my mistakes. This is terrible. O.J. gets in there and starts re-arguing the case. He's going, I'm sorry, I don't complain. But, it really wasn't that bad of a deal. And I had people texting me, he's killing himself. He's gonna blow this thing. The key here was that the Nevada Department of Corrections was like, enough. 9 years, we've dealt with this guy. It really wasn't that serious of a crime. Just get him out of here. So I think O.J. was getting out anyway, but He nearly talked his way back in. I think he still thinks he's holding court at a restaurant or a bar or a banquet somewhere, and everyone's going to love all of his jokes. I mean, some of his lines are absolutely outrageous. I mean, he literally said, this is a direct quote, I have basically lived a conflict-free life. Now, sure, other than the string of domestic violence, the double homicide trial, the 2 times you've been incarcerated, and this armed robbery.
Other than that.
Basically, Dan, I mean, some of the lines he was saying, and then when the parole board's not challenging him on that, it's not like they don't. First off, they have his disciplinary record and his whole case file, but everybody knows this stuff about O.J. Simpson. He was just going to get out, and that's it. So it's really about what kind of life O.J. want to live from here on out.
Well, that leads me to the next question. How short is that leash with O.J. on parole?
Well, there will be, certain things you can't, drink in excess. I'm not really sure how you'd have to probably get nailed on a DUI or something like that. There's different things. But he is expected to move to the St. Petersburg, Florida area where 3 of his kids have kind of put down roots. I thought his oldest daughter, Arnell, was there. She gave probably the most serious and heartfelt of all. It actually wasn't even close. She did a better job for O.J. than O.J. or his attorney did in just pleading to say, look, let this guy out. It's been sad for us. He's a 70-year-old man and all of that. The question is, O.J. would sit there and say, hey, look, I just want to be with my friends and my family. I want to live. I want to stay out of the spotlight. And you go, okay, that's exactly what you should say. Then his attorney's saying, hey, maybe there's a blog in his future. Maybe he's going to do some webcasts
I know.
in his future. Like, what? You're the attorney. You're supposed to be helping him here. I don't know. Are we going to get reality shows and O.J. showing up at memorabilia signings? I mean, he is infamous now. And it's been a long time since the double homicide. And there's a lot of people that weren't alive or remember that. And so, it can bring out the absolute worst in American culture when everyone's celebrating O.J. And if he's at restaurant, he's out on the town, people are going to flock to him. And that is the intoxicating OJ situation when he can charm people. It kind of got him involved in such a ridiculous antics, like, this underground memorabilia market where he got himself back in trouble. So I think everyone would hope that, hey, look, he served his time on this, and this is how the system works. And you hope he's spending it, playing golf and hanging out with his grandkids. But kind of hard to see him be a pensioner down in Florida, going to the early bird special and just, hanging out at the Muni.
Dan Wetzel joining us, Yahoo Sports national columnist. While we have a little bit of time, the Hugh Freeze situation at Ole Miss, I know you wrote about that. What's the one question you have that kind of is still looming over this?
Well, look, here's the situation. Hugh Freeze, back in 2016, the NCAA drops this notice of allegations. There's all this cheating at Ole Miss, but it's hidden from the public. And Hugh Freeze and Ole Miss decide, we're going to tell a bunch of reporters and media members and broadcasters that most of the allegations involve the previous coaching staff, and that was led by Houston Nutt. And it's not about Hugh Freeze, and there's nothing to worry about. They were trying to spin that lie to settle things down and keep their recruiting class, which is about to sign in about 3-4 weeks in early February. So they pitched that lie. And what's a positive for Hugh Freeze, hey, he's not a cheater. These stories come out, is that, the equal and opposite reaction is against Houston Nutt. Oh, he's the cheater. Houston Nutt says, I didn't do it. And eventually last spring in 17, when the notice of allegations, the whole case becomes public, the violations are almost nothing to do with Houston Nutt, and they're everything to do with Hugh Freeze. So Houston Nutt says, you guys slandered me here. I want my good name back. I want an apology. And Ole Miss to set the record straight and have a press conference saying we were wrong on this. Hugh Freeze refused to back down. He refused to do the right thing and apologize after crushing Houston Nutt. So Nutt has a lawyer, a very aggressive lawyer. They file a lawsuit, and they go through his phone records to try to prove that he's calling reporters and spinning this thing. And they're in that investigation. They only get 6 days of phone records. And in there is this one phone call, 1 minute, and the lawyer looks up, what's this number? And it turns out to be associated with an escort down in Florida. And boom, Hugh Freeze is busted. He then says, hey, it's just a wrong number. I misdialed. There was only 1 minute. Ole Miss then says, we're going to look through every single call you've ever made. And now last night they said, hey, there was a very disturbing and consistent pattern of behavior here. When you have that, you look back and say, geez, if you just did the right thing and apologized to a guy who deserved an apology, you're out.
Oh, boy. Enjoy your weekend, Dan. You deserve some time off after the week that you've had.
Quite a week. We got Shark versus Phelps on Sunday night. So we're going to get back to real sporting action.
Thank you, Dan.
See you, Dan.
Dan Wetzel, Yahoo Sports national columnist. Yeah, it's Michael Phelps versus the Shark coming up on Sunday night.
The Dan Patrick Show, weekday mornings on Audience.